I don't remember what song was playing.
That's the first thing people always ask when I tell them the story, like maybe there's some punchline baked into the playlist.
But I don't know. Could have been Sufjan Stevens. Could have been truck engine noises on loop.
I'd set the headphones to full noise cancelling and let myself disappear, which was, in a lot of ways, the only part of my day I really looked forward to.
The thing is, my job isn't real. Not really.
I work for a company that optimizes communication systems, which is to say, we email about emails. I write blurbs. I update slide decks that never get seen.
I'm the guy you forget was in the meeting. And that's always worked for me. Until the alarm. Apparently it started at 2:41 p.m.
Not the alarm itself, the fire. Or minor electrical incident, as it was later framed in the press release.
Enough to send the building's systems into panic mode.
Enough to warrant 2 trucks, for firefighters, and a very annoyed property manager.
The alarm blared. The office emptied. Except me.
I was on the 4th floor, tucked into a corner desk I'd claimed 2 years ago and personalized with a plant I forgot to water and a mug that says "World's Okayest Guy."
I didn't hear a thing. No siren. No footsteps. Not even the ping of Slack messages from coworkers asking where I was. Because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, I was vibing. When I finally looked up, probably around 2:59, the office was ghosted. The lights flickered.
My screensaver had kicked in.
I blinked. Took off my headphones. And that's when I heard it, the siren. Far off, faint, and very not inside. I stood slowly. Confused. Stumbled toward the elevator before remembering I probably shouldn't take it during what was probably an emergency.
I took the stairs instead.
Down 4 flights. Out the side door.
Straight into the arms of 2 firefighters and a small crowd of evacuated employees watching me like I'd just wandered out of a bunker 10 years after the apocalypse. I tried to say something casual. Maybe even witty. What came out was, "Hi." Someone laughed. A phone camera flashed. The next morning, the video was on Twitter. 12 seconds long. Captioned, "When your playlist is more fire than The Office." Over 100,000 views by lunch. By dinner, I was a meme. And by the end of the week, I realized that hiding doesn't work when the world decides to look at you anyway. The worst part wasn't the video. It was the commentary. It's strange how quickly the world decides who you are, especially when all they have is a blurry clip and a dumb caption. The original tweet was harmless enough, a joke, maybe even flattering in a twisted way. But within 24 hours, it had mutated into something else. There were memes. Reaction videos. A TikTok remix of me typing with a burning building filter and animated flames shooting out of my keyboard. One account started a thread called "Signs You're a Fire Guy," which was mostly photos of socially anxious men wearing headphones on public transit. Apparently, I had become the face of detached millennial burnout. By day 3, I was tagged in a post by the brand team at my own company. They turned it into a mini-campaign, "Focus so strong, even fire can't break it." #FireGuyEnergy. My boss emailed me the link with, "Thought you'd get a kick out of this." Marketing gold. Gold. Right. Because nothing says professional success like becoming a walking advertisement for being emotionally unavailable. Max, my best friend from college, texted me that morning. "Bro. You're internet famous. Can I ride your coattails to podcast fame?" I sent back the flame emoji. Then muted my notifications. I didn't want fame. I didn't even want attention. I just wanted to go back to being invisible. Which, in hindsight, is hilarious, because being invisible was what got me here in the first place. That weekend, I walked to the grocery store without my headphones for the first time in probably a year. I could hear everything: the hum of the city, the scratch of my jacket, the stifled sneeze of a guy crossing the street. It was overwhelming. Disorienting. Real. Someone recognized me in the checkout line. A teenage girl, maybe 17. She stared for a second, then said, "Wait.
Are you that guy? The one from the fire meme?" I nodded. Kind of. She grinned. Legend. Then she walked away. No request for a selfie. No follow-up. Just that, legend. And weirdly, it stuck with me. Not because I believed it, but because I think she did. Monday morning, HR called me in. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because there's been a lot of traffic related to your incident. They wanted to know if I was comfortable with the company using the moment for outreach. It's a fun, human story, they said. You stayed calm. You were in the zone. I was in the zone because I didn't hear the danger. Because I didn't notice the world catching fire around me. Because I chose not to. I didn't say any of that. I just said, sure. Go ahead. And just like that, I gave them permission to shape the narrative. To turn me into something clickable. That night, I ordered Thai food and ate it on the couch with the lights off. I scrolled through tweets about myself like a stranger. Some were funny. Most weren't. One read, "Fire guy looks like the human version of I'll deal with it later." I laughed. Then stared at the ceiling. They weren't wrong. Lila hadn't said much. She'd sent me the video the night it went viral, followed by, "Is this you?" I replied, unfortunately, yes. She never texted back. We weren't officially broken up, but we weren't talking either. She'd always said I had a talent for disappearing without leaving. I guess now the whole world agreed. I kept waiting for it to blow over. For someone else to do something dumb. For a newer meme to take the heat off me. But it didn't happen. Not right away. Because people don't just laugh anymore. They build narratives. They create meaning. They project themselves onto whatever face happens to be trending. And I had given them mine. Some people called me a hero. Others called me a cautionary tale. Some said I represented a generation in crisis, as if I'd been making a statement instead of just trying to drown out the fluorescent buzz of a beige office. There was even a Medium article titled, "The Fire Guy Phenomenon, Why We Can't Hear Each Other Anymore." And beneath it all, I still couldn't hear myself. That Friday, I got an email from a journalist. She wanted to do a profile. Said she thought there was more to the story. That she found the silence in the clip more revealing than the noise around it. I didn't reply. I just sat there, watching the blinking cursor in the reply window, wondering if maybe this was what I deserved, to be turned into something symbolic because I'd spent so long avoiding being anything at all. I didn't mean to ghost the journalist. I just didn't answer. And then a day passed, and then 3. By the end of the week, I was pretending I'd never seen the email at all, which is kind of my go-to survival mechanism, strategic amnesia. But the world doesn't let you disappear quietly when it still wants something from you. Especially when it smells a story. On Monday, she followed up. "Hi again. Still would love to speak with you. This piece is more than a meme, it's about how we're all trying to be heard. Let me know." Trying to be heard. The irony wasn't lost on me. I deleted the email. 10 minutes later, I fished it out of the trash and read it again. And then I replied. Just one line. "I don't think I have anything to say." She responded within 5 minutes. Most people don't. That's what makes it interesting. The interview happened in a coffee shop across town that I picked because I thought she wouldn't know it. I'd forgotten that journalists have Google Maps too. She arrived on time. Mid-30s, maybe. Clean black sweater, messy bun, eyes like she'd been up for 3 days but didn't care. "You don't have to say anything clever," she said, before I even sat down. Good. I haven't said anything clever since 2014. She laughed. Pulled out a small voice recorder, set it between us, and hit record. "So, tell me about the moment you took the headphones off." I stared at her. then down at the table. Honestly? My first thought was that someone had pranked me. Like,
I missed a Slack thread about a fake drill or something.
And then? Then I realized people were filming. What did that feel like? I paused. Sipped my coffee. Like I'd been seen. But not the good kind.
The kind where it's already too late to fix your face.
She nodded. Didn't write anything down. Did you like being invisible? It worked for me. That's not an answer. Okay. No. I didn't like it. But I was good at it. She leaned back. Let that sit. And now? Now I feel like someone opened the curtain on a play I didn't audition for. But you showed up. Did I? She tilted her head. You replied to my email. You came here. I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. Why do you think people connected with the video so much? She asked. Because it's easy to relate to someone who's tuned out. We're all just pretending we're fine, right? Maybe I was the only one dumb enough to get caught doing it on camera. She smiled. Not mockingly. Almost kindly. That's the quote right there. The article came out 3 days later. It was better than I expected. She didn't sensationalize it. No clickbait headline. Just, Fire Guy speaks, on noise, attention, and what happens when the world decides to hear you. There was a photo of me, taken at the cafe, not looking at the camera, fingers curled around my coffee cup, face half in shadow. I looked like a guy mid-thought. Which, to be fair, is exactly what I was. My inbox blew up again. Mostly strangers. Some old friends I hadn't talked to in years. One ex. I always knew there was more going on under the surface. Cool. Thanks for the follow-up 2 years after breaking up with me via shared Google Doc. Max called the next night. So are you famous now, or what? If I am, it's by accident. That's the only kind that matters. He was silent for a second. Then. You sounded real. In the article. Like, you. Was that a compliment? Gross, right? I take it back. We laughed. But later that night, I sat in the dark, rereading my own quotes. Trying to figure out if they felt true, or if I just finally figured out how to say things in a way that made people believe me. I didn't know yet. The next morning, I got a package. No note. No return address. Inside, a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Same model. Different color. Mint green. I stared at them for a long time. Then put them back in the box and shoved them under my bed. I wasn't ready. Not to disappear again. Not just yet. The first message came from Becca. My sister. 3 years older, 2 kids, one shared trauma we don't talk about unless someone's drunk or stranded in an airport overnight. Her text was short. Saw the article. You good? 3 words. That's more than we'd exchanged in a year. I stared at it for an hour before replying. Define good. She didn't write back. Which was fine. That was our rhythm, brief flare-ups of recognition, followed by another stretch of silence we both agreed not to question. But then came the others. Messages from high school people I didn't remember adding. A girl I once kissed at a party freshman year. My old college roommate, who used to fall asleep to The Office reruns in existential dread. And one from Lila. So, you can be honest. Just takes a national spotlight. It wasn't angry. Not really. Just pointed. Like a scalpel. I didn't respond. What could I say? That the only reason I'd managed to speak at all was because someone else asked the questions? That being on the record somehow made me more present than I ever was when it mattered? I almost texted Max about it.
but instead, I shut my laptop, shoved my phone under a pillow, and went outside. It was cold. The kind that sneaks up on you, even in a hoodie. I walked without headphones again. I'd been doing that more lately. Not out of protest or newfound mindfulness, mostly because I was scared of what I'd miss if I wasn't paying attention. Like my life might ring again and I'd sleep through it. The streetlights buzzed. A guy on a bike sped past, yelling into a Bluetooth mic about spreadsheets and someone named Karen. A woman walked a pit bull in a pink sweater. Somewhere, someone played jazz out their window, and for a moment, it felt like the city was trying to hum me back into place. I ended up at the laundromat. Not because I needed to wash anything, but because it was bright and warm and full of noise that didn't need me to participate. I sat in the corner booth with a soda from the vending machine and watched the dryers spin. No one looked at me. No one filmed me. And it was in that tiny pocket of nobody cares that I started to write again. Not for Medium. Not for Twitter. Just for me. On a napkin at first. Then my notes app. Then a blank Google Doc with no name. I wrote. I was so focused on not being the main character that I forgot I was still in the story. And it hit me so hard I had to stop for a second. I wasn't a spectator. Not anymore. Not unless I chose to be. Later that night, I got an email from an old professor. Dr. Fields. He taught nonfiction writing and once told me that the best stories come from the places we're most embarrassed to look. Saw your face in the news. Strange how life folds back on itself. You always had something to say. Hope you're still listening to your own voice. I wasn't sure what choked me up more, the fact that he remembered me, or that he'd waited years to say it. I wrote back. Trying. Not sure if I'm saying it right yet. He replied. There's no right. Only honest. And I knew then I wasn't done talking. The next morning, I stood in front of my apartment mirror and practiced saying a sentence I'd never been able to say before. Hi. I don't really know how to be known. Then again. Hi. I'm used to being ignored. It felt safer. And again. Hi. I'm here now. It still sounded fake. But it was a start. I thought about calling Lila. Actually using my voice. Not texting. Not some cryptic comment in a thread. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I logged out of every social account I had. No announcement. No public detox declaration. Just, gone. Because the next thing I said? I wanted it to count. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted it to be quiet enough to hear myself say it. 3 days after I logged out of everything, someone knocked on my door. It was a Thursday. Gray sky. I hadn't left the apartment in over 24 hours. I was eating pasta from a mug, rereading an old paperback I didn't remember buying, and wondering if this whole attempt at reinvention was just an elaborate excuse to avoid doing actual work. The knock came again. Not a delivery, no one buzzed. Not the super, he just walks in. I stood up slowly, mug in one hand, and peeked through the peephole. It was her. Not Lila. The woman from 2 floors down. The one with the glasses and the enormous tote bag always filled with paperbacks and reusable produce sacks. We'd passed in the hallway maybe a dozen times. Nodded. Once shared an elevator ride where I panicked and said nice weather, even though it was hailing. I opened the door. Slowly. Hi, she said. I blinked. Hey. She lifted a hand in a half wave. I hope this isn't weird. I know we don't really know each other, but I saw the article. And the video. And, I baked muffins. She held out a Tupperware container like it was an olive branch or maybe a small bomb. I took it. Why? She shrugged. I figured everyone else wanted something from you. I just figured you might want carbs. I stared. Then opened the lid.
Blueberry. Still warm. Okay, I said. You can stay. Her name was June. Yes, like the month. No, not short for anything. She worked in publishing. Or used to. Something about an imprint that went under. She freelanced now. Mostly copy editing, some ghostwriting, and the occasional gig writing jacket blurbs for romance novels. She sat on my couch like she'd been there before. Not comfortable, but not afraid to take up space either. I sat opposite, clutching my mug like a flotation device. You seem like someone who doesn't get a lot of kindness without strings, she said, not unkindly. That obvious? No. Just familiar. We talked for almost an hour. About nothing. About everything. She didn't bring up the Fire clip again. Didn't ask for details. Didn't try to be deep. Just was. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't being observed. I was just being. When she left, I walked her to the elevator. You should open your windows more, she said, glancing at the dusty panes. Why? Because air that doesn't move goes stale. Then the doors slid shut, and she was gone. I opened my windows. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the old Google document. The one I'd left blank for months. Not the napkin thoughts. The real one. The one that scared me. I wrote. I used to think that if I stayed still enough, the world would forget to expect anything from me. But it turns out, not moving is also a decision. And eventually, the world knocks anyway. I saved it. Gave it a title. Things I only heard after the alarm. Friday morning, I opened my door to find another package. No name. Inside, a handwritten note and a pair of orange foam earplugs. The note read, "Just in case you ever want to choose the silence next time. J." I laughed. Loud enough to scare myself. I put the earplugs in the drawer. Not because I needed them. But because I liked knowing they were mine to use, or not, when I was ready. You don't realize how much of your life is background noise until it stops. The hum of the fridge. The half-conversations through paper-thin walls. The clicking of your own keyboard. Once you start noticing those things, you can't unnotice them. Silence isn't quiet, it's crowded. The Monday after June brought muffins, I went back to work. Kind of. I wasn't fired. That much was clear. My boss even sent me a welcome back email with a link to a marketing article that mentioned our company. I was in it. My name. My photo. The face of focus in the modern workplace. I wanted to quit. But quitting felt like giving the story an ending I didn't choose. So I went in. Headphones in my bag. Not on my head. The office was quiet, which was unusual. People nodded at me like I'd survived something real. Maybe I had. I sat down at my desk, turned on my monitor, and just waited. I didn't check Twitter. Didn't open Slack. Just sat there. Listening to the room breathe. It was uncomfortable. But it wasn't bad. Until midday, when someone finally approached. I loved the article, she said. I think her name was Karen. Or Caitlin. We'd worked in the same building for 2 years, and this was the first conversation we'd ever had. Thanks, I said. Because what else do you say to a sentence like that? You should write more. I don't usually read those things, but this one felt honest. I nodded. She smiled and left. It was the kind of thing I should have written down. Instead, I just sat there, trying to hold on to it. That night, I got another message from Lila. Still watching you become someone. Still not sure who. Still hoping it's you. I didn't know how to respond to that. Or if I even should. So I saved it. Took a screenshot. Put it in a folder labeled later. I wasn't proud of that. But at least it wasn't ignore.
June came by again 2 days later.
She didn't knock this time. Just caught me in the hallway with a bag of trash in one hand and mismatched socks. "Still writing?"
she asked, like it was a normal question.
"Sometimes. Depends on how brave I feel." She nodded. "That tracks." We stood there awkwardly for a second. "Want coffee?" she asked. I hesitated. Then said yes. We went to a place I didn't know existed 2 blocks from my apartment. One of those cafes that looks like it used to be someone's living room, weird art, overstuffed chairs, no menu. Just a guy behind the counter who asked, "You trust me?" and then handed us mugs that smelled like burnt toast and brown sugar. We talked. About music. About our worst jobs. About books we pretended to have read in college. She told me about her dad, a musician who never got famous, but taught her that most good songs only need 3 chords and some honesty. I told her about the day my dad left. I don't know why. It just came out. Like a splinter I didn't realize was still there. She didn't flinch. My mom once left a note that said back in 10 and came back 6 months later. So, yeah. People disappear in different ways. We didn't talk after that. Just drank the coffee. Let the quiet settle in without trying to fix it. And I realized that was the difference. With her, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like permission. That night, I pulled out my headphones. Held them in my hands. Not to wear. Just to look. They'd meant safety once. Now they felt like a monument to everything I didn't say. I didn't throw them away. But I did put them back in the box. Then I opened my doc and wrote. You can't hear people clapping if you're still covering your ears from the last time you got booed. I saved it. Let it sit. Like music I didn't know I liked yet. It started with a phone call. Not a text. Not a DM. An actual call. The kind that lights up your screen with someone's name and makes your chest tighten with the realization that this could be something, or worse, someone you've been avoiding. It was Becca. I stared at her name for 2 full rings before answering. Hey. Her voice was the same. Slightly sharp, like she was always 1 coffee past her limit. But this time, it wasn't annoyed. It was cautious. Hi. I saw your writing again. Sort of. You always said you would. I didn't believe you. Thanks. She laughed. The same dry laugh I remembered from every Thanksgiving where we made eye contact across the table during Mom's passive-aggressive monologues. I meant it. Kind of. We talked for 20 minutes. Mostly updates. Kids. Weather. The weird resurgence of 90s fashion. But then she said. I read the piece about the fire. And the quiet. And everything. I didn't say anything. I just wanted you to know I heard you. And that wrecked me more than anything else had. June and I started seeing each other more often. Still no labels. No expectations. She was the kind of person who didn't fill silences with apologies. She just let them be. One evening, we sat on her fire escape, passing a bottle of wine between us, eating takeout from plastic containers. She asked me what I would do if the internet forgot me tomorrow. I thought for a moment. I'd probably breathe easier. Then wonder why I didn't miss it. She nodded. That's either very healthy or very sad. I think it's both. Later, I asked if she'd ever felt like her life was someone else's idea of success. She said yes, then told me a story about a manuscript she once ghostwrote for a YouTuber who wanted to be seen as thoughtful. What did you write? Whatever they wanted. But sometimes I snuck in real things. Just to see if anyone noticed. Did they? Not once. We laughed. But not the kind of laugh that escapes. The kind that stays in your chest. On a quiet Sunday, I pulled out my old journals. The ones I'd boxed up when I moved in. Pages of half-sentences, lyrics I never finished, emails I never sent. I read through them like archaeology. Pieces of myself I forgot existed. Not all of it was good. Most of it wasn't. But some lines hit harder now. I don't know how to stop being a mirror for people who never look at me. Love isn't loud. But fear always shouts. Maybe I'm just waiting for someone to notice I've been here the whole time. I didn't know who I was writing to back then. Maybe just to prove I had a voice. Now, it felt like I was finally listening back. A friend of a friend messaged me to ask if I'd be interested in telling my story on a podcast. Nothing huge. Just a personal interview series called Echo Chamber. They'd interviewed comedians, authors, even a guy who quit his tech job to build treehouses. I almost declined. But then I thought about Becca. And June. And that kid in the grocery store who called me legend. So I said yes. The recording was in a converted garage in Queens. The host was chill, not overly polished. Just curious. Her questions were thoughtful. Not invasive. What did the silence teach you? She asked, halfway through. I paused. That I'd been using it wrong. Like a wall. But really, it could have been a window. And now? I'm still figuring it out. But I'm trying to leave it open. When the episode aired, it didn't trend. It didn't go viral. But a few dozen strangers reached out. Quiet people. Soft voices. One message just said, "Thanks for not making it a joke." I cried a little at that one. Because I'd spent so long thinking my life was a joke, the quiet guy who missed the alarm. But maybe it was a story. One I finally wanted to finish. The morning after the podcast dropped, I woke up to 3 missed calls. All from my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in, I don't know, maybe a year? Maybe more. Time blurs when the only contact is the annual forwarded e-card she sends me for my birthday. Digital confetti. A stock photo cupcake. That kind of thing. Her last voicemail had been some rambling comment about a neighbor's cat dying and asking if I still lived in that apartment with the crooked hallway. But this time? She called 3 times in a row. No voicemail. Just silence in my notifications, shaped like her. I didn't call back. Not immediately. Instead, I opened my window. Let the city air flood in. It smelled like burnt toast, car exhaust, and the promise of something uncomfortable. I made coffee. Thought about June. About Becca. About what it would mean to answer the phone. Then I called. Hello? Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Less clipped. No passive-aggressive sharpness. Just cautious. Hi, Mom. Silence. Then. I heard you. On that show. Podcast thing. Yeah. I didn't know you felt that way. I didn't know what to say. Because she wasn't wrong, I hadn't let her know. Or maybe I had, and she hadn't listened. Either way, we'd both chosen distance and called it peace. I didn't say everything, I admitted. You said enough. More than I expected. She cleared her throat. You sounded like your father. A pause. But better. Softer. We talked for 10 minutes. Not long. But longer than we had in years. She didn't ask about the fire. Or the internet. Just if I was okay. And for once, I said yes. Not because I was. But because I wanted to believe it. That weekend, June and I went to a bookstore in Brooklyn that smelled like dust and forgotten ambition. We each picked out one book the other had to read. She gave me a worn copy of Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I like Didion, she said. She was scared, but she kept showing up. I gave her a book of poems I hadn't opened since college.
This changed how I thought about quiet, I said.
We didn't say much else. Just held hands. Read on a bench by the window.
Let the day fold in around us like soft fabric.
I didn't feel like Fire Guy. I felt like me. It was weird. And good. That night, I wrote Lila. Not a long message. Not an apology. Just, I'm starting to hear things now. Sorry it took so long. She didn't reply right away. That was okay. I didn't send it to get her back. I sent it because it was the one thing I hadn't said out loud, and now I was saying it. Later, she responded. You weren't broken. Just muffled. I hope you stay loud. I smiled. Saved the message. Didn't reread it to death. Sunday morning, Max called. You free tonight? Why? I'm making chili. Thought you might want to eat something with flavor for once. I cook. Boiling pasta isn't cooking. Fair. We hung out. Ate. Talked about movies and nothing. He told me he was seeing someone new. I told him about June. Not everything. Just enough. I like this version of you, he said. Which one? The one that calls back. I didn't have a comeback. Just smiled and stole another spoonful of his chili. That night, I opened my Google Doc and added a new section. Not everything has to go viral to be real. Some moments are just for you. And maybe one other person who gets it. I didn't publish it. Just hit save. Because some stories are still unfolding. And this one? This one was just now starting to find its volume. The night before my old building's annual fire drill, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the alarm. I'd been warned. Everyone got the notice in the mail, a printed sheet slipped under the door, scheduled fire drill, Tuesday, 10 a.m. sharp. No actual emergency. Just protocol. I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what it would feel like to hear the sound this time. To be ready for it. Not just to move, but to notice. In the months since the video, since the article, since the podcast, life had shifted. Not flipped upside down, not exploded into a Hallmark redemption arc. But shifted. Like the room had changed by 1 inch, and suddenly the air moved differently. I'd stopped counting retweets. Stopped refreshing email. I still wrote, but only when I had something to say. And even then, sometimes I didn't share it. Some stories aren't meant for everyone. June called them ghost notes, the barely there vibrations between the louder ones. The parts you feel more than hear. She said, that's where the truth lives. So I started listening for them. The morning of the fire drill, I got up early. Showered. Made eggs. Opened every window. Then, at 9:55 a.m., I took the headphones off my bookshelf. Held them. Not to wear, just to remind myself that silence is a choice. I left them on the table. Then I sat. And waited. At exactly 10 a.m., the alarm went off. Loud. Piercing. Unignorable. And I stood. Grabbed my jacket. Walked to the door. Not rushed. Not panicked. Just present. I made it outside in under 2 minutes. The courtyard buzzed with people. Some annoyed. Some amused. Most indifferent. I stood there, feeling the sun on my neck, the sound in my chest, the moment in my bones. It was just a drill. But it felt like something else. Like proof. June met me for lunch that day. We sat in the park, sandwiches in hand, watching a kid try to feed pigeons with pretzel sticks. I passed the test, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Didn't know there was one. I heard the alarm. She smiled. Bit into her sandwich. That's not a test. That's just waking up. I'll take it. You should. You've come a long way from emotionally ghosted cubicle man. Was that my official title? Only in my head. We laughed. I took a breath. You make it easier to stay present. You make it easier to wait. I don't want you to wait forever. She looked at me. Straight on. No games. Then keep showing up. That night, I finally opened the email from the podcast producer. They wanted to do a follow-up. A Where Are They Now episode. Said people were curious. Wanted closure. But I wasn't sure I wanted to be answered. So I replied. Thanks, but I think the best part of this story is that it didn't end with a headline. It ended with a fire alarm I actually heard. Everything else? That's just life now. They didn't reply. That was fine. Before bed, I opened my doc. No drafts. No performance. Just this. I used to miss the alarms. All of them. The ones inside me. The ones screaming outside. But now? I hear them. And I move. Not because I'm afraid anymore. But because I'm finally here. I hit save. Closed the laptop. Sat in the quiet. And listened. A few weeks after the drill, June asked me what I missed the most. We were in her apartment, bare feet on the couch, a movie paused somewhere in the middle. Outside, the city kept humming car horns, wind, someone arguing into a phone. Inside, only the sound of popcorn cooling in the bowl between us. She asked it casually, like you'd ask about someone's favorite cereal. But I knew what she meant. What did I miss from the person I used to be? And the answer came before I could second guess it. The quiet. The kind I didn't have to earn. She nodded. Didn't press. Just let it be. I kept writing. Not all of it good. Some of it indulgent. Some of it so raw I closed the doc halfway through and needed to take a walk. But I was saying things now. Not just into a void. Not just for applause. I sent a piece to Becca. A short essay about our dad. About the way he left without ever closing the door behind him. She replied. I thought I was the only one who remembered that detail. We didn't say more. We didn't have to. She mailed me a photo. Us in a bathtub, maybe 3 and 6 years old. Bubbles up to our chins. She was grinning. I was holding a toy submarine. A moment neither of us remembered, but both of us kept. I put it on the fridge. One afternoon, I ran into the guy from HR in the elevator. He looked at me like he wanted to ask something, so I offered. Still working on that focus campaign? He laughed, almost embarrassed. Honestly? You gave us our highest engagement all quarter. Happy to help, I guess. You ever think about doing a TED Talk? I blinked. God, no. He smiled. Probably a good call. Would ruin the mystique. Then the elevator dinged and he was gone. Mystique. Sure. Let's call it that. Lila texted me one more time. I saw your new piece. I'm glad you're living it now. Not just surviving it. I stared at the message for a long time. Then replied. Me too. That was it. Not a beginning. Not a sequel. Just, peace. June and I never had the what are we talk. We didn't need to. We were what happened after the alarm. The people who stayed. The kind that listen, even when it's hard. One night, she said. You still write like you're apologizing for taking up space. I looked up from the screen. I'm working on that. She nodded. Good. Because you're here. You might as well echo. A year after the fire alarm, I bought a new pair of headphones. Not noise cancelling. Not top of the line. Just normal. I use them sometimes. On the train. When the world gets too sharp. But I always keep one ear uncovered. Just in case. Because I don't need silence to feel safe anymore. I just need to know I can still hear what matters. Here's what I know now. You don't get to choose your viral moment. You don't control how the world sees you. Sometimes you become a punchline before you ever open your mouth. But you can choose what comes next. You can choose to stay. To speak. To be seen. You can choose to hear the alarm not as a warning, but as an invitation. To begin. To notice. To belong. And if you're lucky, maybe someone's there when you do. Not to fix you. Just to listen.